Anyone can sell electronics. At Electronics Expo, they do more than sell products. They design, install, and support complete technology solutions. From home theaters and whole home audio to lighting, shades, automation, networking, security cameras, and premium entertainment systems. For over 22 years, they've helped thousands of homeowners experience technology at its very best. See the difference for yourself. Visit their Wayne or Paramus stores in New Jersey or shop now at electronicsexpo.com.
Esta noche, la espera termina. Operación Triunfo llega a Telemundo. Miles respondieron al llamado.
Este es mi destino.
Pero solo unos pocos llegarán a la Gala Cero.
Aquí todo el mundo está ready. Aquí hay nivel.
¿Quiénes serán los elegidos?
Me voy a ganar mi lugar en la Gala Cero.
Descúbrelo en el gran estreno de Operación Triunfo Estados Unidos. Esta noche a las 7:06 Centro por Telemundo y Peacock.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome into the Stone Zone. We have bombshell developments today in the Seth Rich case. You may remember Seth Rich was the Democrat National Committee staffer who was brutally and mysteriously murdered shortly after information from the Democratic National Committee allegedly ended up in the hands of WikiLeaks. Of course, Robert Mueller and those in the deep state invented the false narrative that the Democrat National Committee had been hacked by a Russian online hacker. It was at my trial that the FBI was forced to admit that they had never inspected the computer servers of the Democratic National Committee. In fact, there is to this day no proof whatsoever that the DNC was hacked by the Russians or anyone else. For many years, there has been speculation that Seth Rich was the leaker of that information, but the FBI has stoutly denied that they had any information in their files regarding Seth Rich's murder. Today, we learned from an attorney pursuing this case that the FBI has found previously hidden at the FBI headquarters substantial, allegedly thousands of records regarding Seth Rich's murder that were linked back to the 2016 Crossfire Hurricane investigation. This, of course, is the second time that the FBI has found records in burn bags that related to that investigation. Now, these have not been released yet. We don't know what the FBI will agree to release. But this is bombshell information and an important case that I think blows the cover on the entire Russian collusion hoax once again. We already know, based on the disclosures by the former director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, that the Russian collusion claims were a hoax invented by the Biden administration, or probably by the Obama administration, beginning in 2016, and in one continuous seditious conspiracy. Since that time, the FBI has gradually and slowly admitted to having data regarding Seth Rich. They first denied having anything, then they denied having his work laptop or an image of his personal laptop or any other information. Nonetheless, over time, they have slowly admitted a much greater knowledge. Perhaps Joe DeGeneva's grand jury investigation now going on in South Florida can put the heat on these very same players. So this is a developing story and one of the hottest stories in American politics. For many years, no one would cover the question of Seth Rich's murder. We're going to be following this one very, very closely, but this is a breakthrough today. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump is in Turkey today for the NATO summit, where he's doing what he does best, putting America first and not taking any nonsense from our so-called allies. You'll recall in President Trump's first term, he got our NATO allies to cough up $650 million in past due dues they owed to the organization. They had essentially been taking Uncle Sam for a sucker as we paid for their national defense. Now, personally, I understood the importance of NATO in the aftermath of World War II, when Europe was devastated and America was still economically relatively strong. But over time, it has never made sense to me that while America had economic problems, we had continued to pay for the defense of our NATO allies when they didn't pay their fair share. Talk about consistency. When Donald Trump traveled to New Hampshire in 1988, at my suggestion, to kind of test the waters for a potential presidential bid, something that Trump decided on his own was premature, he spoke about this in his luncheon speech to the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. So this is not a new theme for the president. He continues to be a critic of NATO. More precisely and more recently, in our actions both in Midnight Hammer and Epic Fury, when our NATO allies did not allow us to use the U.S. bases that we bought and paid for in their countries. Yes, I'm talking about you, Italy. So the president is at a contentious meeting here in Ankara with our NATO allies. While meeting with the Turkish president, Erdogan, a man Trump has always praised as a strong leader and a friend, the president dropped some major bombshells, announcing the United States will be lifting the sanctions on Turkey that were put in place after they bought Russian defense systems. He also said he'd be seriously considered selling them F-35 fighter jets again. Trump didn't stop there, however. He went on to address the rest of NATO, blasting the European countries for refusing to let America give America help when we needed them in Iran, even after we spent literally trillions protecting them for decades. The president made it crystal clear he's disappointed with NATO, and he's openly considering pulling American troops out of Europe. Personally, I think that's a great idea. As he put it, if the summit wasn't in Turkey with his friend Erdogan, he might not even have shown up. This is classic Trump, calling out the freeloading Europeans who refuse to pull their own weight while making smart transactional deals that put America interests first. No more America getting taken advantage of. No more Uncle Sam playing the sucker. America first is back, and real leverage is being used to get results. The mainstream media may hate it, but this is exactly how you put America in a position of strength once again. Meanwhile, Democrats seem to be in full damage control in Maine, where Senate candidate Graham Plattner is now facing a political collapse after a woman who previously dated him alleged that he raped her in 2021. Plattner is, of course, challenging Susan Collins, a veteran Republican senator who's thought to be among the most vulnerable incumbents in the country. Given the expected closeness and competitiveness of the 2026 elections, this Maine race was marked by Democrats as one of their key opportunities for a pickup, but that seems to have collapsed when the sitting governor of Maine withdrew from the race, and they nominated Graham Plattner, a very strange individual, has a Nazi tattoo and a very storied history, very odd. Plattner, of course, denies these latest allegations, but the fallout has been swift. Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego, himself under federal investigation for misuse of campaign funds and a rather racy lifestyle, rescinded his endorsement, calling the allegations troubling and deeply serious. California Congressman Ro Khanna went further, saying sexual assault is a red line and urged Plattner to drop out. Our Revolution, that's the progressive group born out of Bernie Sanders' 2060 campaign, also pulled its support and called on Plattner to withdraw. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democratic National Senatorial Committee Chair Kristen Gillibrand of New York, said the allegations are incredibly disturbing and warned that the Democrat Senate Campaign Committee will not invest in the Maine Senate race if Plattner remains on the ballot. So you see one of their best chances in the country collapsing in the state of Maine. Susan Collins a more moderate Republican, but a longtime friend of mine. I would rather have a senator who's with you 65 to 70% of the time rather than a radical progressive like Plattner who's with you 0% of the time. In this case, the alleged victim, one Jenny Racicot, told Politico she had an on and off relationship with Plattner and alleged that he came to her rural Maine home uninvited while drunk and raped her despite repeated objections. Plattner has adamantly denied the claim, but there have been too many scandals for him to overcome. For Democrats, the political damage is undeniable and a serious stain on the party, whether Plattner abdicates or not. This is the latest in an array of scandals surrounding a candidate the left once promoted as a fresh standard bearer of political change. Democrats have spent years lecturing the country about believing women and moral accountability. They have said to believe all women. But now if Plattner refuses to budge and stays in the race all the way till November, they'll be put between a rock and a hard place. And that's not boding well for their mid-team chances in Maine or across the country. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump announced Monday that Walmart will lower prices on a range of everyday products after a request from the Trump administration, tying the move to America's upcoming 205th birthday celebration. That was last weekend, actually. President Trump said that Walmart will cut the price of ground beef, for example, by 15%, along with reductions on other key products. He praised the company as one of America's biggest, best, and smartest retailers, calling Walmart a patriotic company that loves the United States. For millions of working Americans who shop at Walmart, this is welcome news. After years of painful inflation under Joe Biden, Americans have been desperate for relief at the grocery store, the gas pump, and the pharmacy counter. Whether or not Republicans are successful in the midterm elections will hinge very much on whether that by November they feel that they have gotten that relief. President Trump says his administration is already delivering. He points to the falling oil and gas prices, lower egg prices, and efforts to bring down prescription drug prices. He also noted that it was the previous administration who caused the worst inflation crisis in history, along with Biden's failures at the southern border and the disaster withdrawal of Afghanistan and the death of Americans there. President Trump's strong leadership and willingness to fight for the people shows that when leaders put America first, businesses are forced to respond. Free market, as we have been sold by Washington, D.C., egghead economists, is a lie, unfortunately. President Trump is using the bully pulpit to push major retailers to help consumers directly. Walmart is stepping up. President Trump is urging other retailers to follow its lead. As we continue celebrating 250 years of American independence, this is exactly the kind of patriotic partnership voters want to see between the public and private sectors. It's resulting in lower prices and stronger businesses because we finally have a government focused on helping American families. Just like in Britain with Brexit, Nigel Farage won't stop him. He achieves a victory. We at the Stone Home wish him the best in his endeavors to make Britain great again. Nigel Farage has thrown down the gauntlet in the UK to the political establishment. His Reform UK Leadership Party announced that he will resign as a member of Parliament, triggering a by-election he plans to contest himself. Farage, who won that seat in 2024, says the vote will be a direct test of whether the voters or the insiders at Westminster get the final say. He calls it a people versus the establishment by-election, that's a special election, and said it's a chance for ordinary citizens to push back against political elites and a hostile press. This important symbolic move comes as Farage faces scrutiny over his personal finances and political donations, including a £5 million gift from a cryptocurrency businessman named Christopher Harborn, and some questions about support for a longtime associate, George Cottrell. Farage denies any wrongdoing, says he's broken no laws, and the allegations are part of an ongoing establishment campaign to discredit him and his Reform UK movement. We see democracy fraying at the edges in the UK. Once the cradle of free speech and democracy, today in the UK, it is illegal to question radical Islam, for which you will be prosecuted. And we have seen not only citizens, but even school children arrested and prosecuted over such actions. Farage has called out sections of the media targeting his family, including his daughter, and as the news coverage has intensified, this move to resign his seat and go to a special by-election as a test is a piece of political genius, and I'm looking forward to that contest. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. We'll be back with more political news, including this great bombshell story regarding Seth Rich. I'll be back on the other side, so whatever you do, don't go away.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Wednesday, July 8th with first pitch at 6:30. It's Woo Wednesday in collaboration with the Wu-Tang Clan. The Ferry Hawks transform into the Shaolin Hawks. Thursday, July 9th, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light drafts.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats. This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
And you're back in the Stone Zone. A new federal lawsuit alleges that the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, treated thousands of unvaccinated employees and contractors like counterintelligence threats after President Joe Biden imposed his COVID-19 vaccination mandate back in 2021. According to this new complaint filed on June 30th in federal court in Virginia, the CIA's chief operating officer directed the agency's counter-espionage department to investigate every worker and contractor who refused to take the shot. Lawmakers say those Americans were treated as threats to the United States government simply because they made a personal medical decision not to take an incredibly dangerous, rushed, and experimental vaccination, which had never been put through trials, and the makers of whom had no legal liability. The plaintiffs say a cross-agency group created under former Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard learned of the order from a whistleblower in 2025, then asked the CIA to confirm it. According to complaint, the agency confirmed thousands had been investigated but did not cite the legal authority to do so. One unvaccinated employee, James Erdman III, who became a very celebrated whistleblower before a Senate testimony, asked the CIA to purge investigation-related material from personnel files. Lawyers say the agency never responded, prompting this newly filed lawsuit. No affected workers have reportedly been fired, but attorneys warn the existence of those files could haunt employees and contractors for years. They're essentially creating dossiers against people who believe in their fundamental rights. This is a Stalin-esque policy that could very well lead to abuses such as purges. The Feds for Freedom, a group co-funded by Erdman, is backing the case and says that national security professionals should never face counter-espionage scrutiny, for it is a private medical decision. The Biden-era COVID regime weaponized institutions like the CIA to go after vaccine refusers. This is an outrage, but should not come as a surprise to anyone who understands how the government operates. They want more power for themselves, and they'll stop at nothing to achieve it, even if it means innocent lives are crushed in their efforts to do so. Also coming up in the Stone Zone, more troubling COVID-related news, as a report is raising serious questions about what federal health bureaucrats knew before the world fully understood the dreaded Chinese virus. We're going to talk about emails obtained by the Oversight Project, reportedly showing that NIH and other HHS officials were reviewing taxpayer-funded grants connected to one Dr. Zhao Yusen, a Chinese military researcher tied to the Academy of Military Medical Sciences, as early as February of 2020. That Dr. Zhao later filed one of the first COVID-19 vaccination patents in February of 24. That timeline has long alarmed congressional investigators. Developing such a vaccine so quickly would likely require much earlier access to the virus sequence, the live virus, or both. That doctor died under unusual circumstances in 2020, perhaps to shut him up. because he knew too much. This is the kind of bombshell news you hear only in the Stone Zone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back with more politics on the other side, including an update on how President Donald Trump is doing at the NATO conference in Turkey, where we just got a fresh report. You're listening to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Whatever you do, stick with us.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. This new report by the Oversight Project, headed by Mike Howell, is really shocking, and the concern is obvious. Under Dr. Anthony Fauci's leadership, American taxpayer dollars were flowing into research networks connected to China, including institutions linked to the People's Liberation Army and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Yet when lawmakers asked Fauci whether it concerned him that U.S. funds could have reached a high-ranking Chinese military official, Fauci said he did not even know the person being discussed in one of his many disgraceful lies under oath to the American people. Of course, Dr. Fauci has gotten a preemptive federal pardon by Joe Biden, but that pardon was signed with an auto pen. Still believe it should be tested in the American courts. This is how this works. The Department of Justice simply charges Fauci with violation of the False Statements Act before the Congress. Fauci's lawyers would respond by saying that he's immune from this prosecution because of his pardon. The government would argue that the pardon is not valid because it was signed by auto pen. And then the defense would have to produce Joe Biden himself to say that he knew about and authorized that particular pardon and the use of the auto pen, something I find highly unlikely. Why that hasn't happened, I don't even know. For years now, the Americans, like me, were called conspiracy theorists if we even dared to ask hard questions about COVID's origins, Chinese secrecy, or taxpayer-funded research. Now, as document after document surfaces, those questions look more justified than ever to me. The public deserves transparency, accountability, and a full accounting of every dollar spent overseas, particularly if our American taxpayers were used to weaponize the COVID-19 virus. The public also deserves heads up as what other crimes were perpetrated during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is not water under the bridge. These were intolerable acts that caused damage that will impact our society for generations. It's time for heads to roll, figuratively and perhaps literally as well, but we do need to get to the bottom of it. Meanwhile, New York City's public school system is facing a devastating indictment, and taxpayers once again deserve answers. A new report from the Success Academy, entitled By Any Honest Measure, says that nearly 900 city public schools are failing to properly educate our children. According to the report, 906 schools had fewer than half their students proficient in math, reading, or both on last year's New York State exams. That means roughly 43% of the city's 912 public school students are stuck in schools where basic academic achievements are not the norm. This shocking report argues that failure has been allowed to become normalized through rate inflation, weak accountability, and, of course, ever-growing spending. New York City reportedly spent about $40 billion on public education in 2024, or roughly $36,000 per student, about twice the national average. Yet many of the worst-performing schools continue receiving high levels of funding, even as enrollment declines. Researchers found 503 schools where most students failed both math and reading assessments. Some have been listed as struggling for years, indeed even decades. The report also criticizes the Mamdani administration's class size reduction mandate, saying billions are being poured into schools with shrinking enrollment and little evidence of improved results. Success Academy founder Eva Moskowitz says that this is the most comprehensive look at chronic failure in America's single largest school system. It is clear that more money is not fixing our broken schools. Parents, I think, need transparency, accountability, and an end to grade inflation, and more access to successful charter schools to be able to give educational opportunities to their children. Unfortunately, under the Mamdani administration, they'll be going radically in the opposite direction, I suspect with cataclysmic results. Here's an updated report from the NATO meeting in Turkey. As President Trump appears at the NATO summit in Ankara, his administration is once again making it clear America is done carrying Europe's defense burden alone. U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker, a former acting Attorney General of the United States and a good friend of mine, told CNBC that Washington's goal is for Europe to take over the conventional defense of the European continent. His message was blunt, as he stated, we're not going away, we're just going to be doing less. That is exactly the kind of America First realism that I think voters elected President Trump to deliver. For decades, American taxpayers have helped bankroll the defense of wealthy European nations that all too often fail to meet even NATO's old 2% spending target. Last year, President Trump pushed our allies to go much further, calling for NATO members to spend up to 5% of their GDP on defense. Now, during this NATO summit, European officials are scrambling to show progress. Diplomats say allies will highlight increased defense spending, new industrial cooperation, and more support for Ukraine. Some European NATO countries are reportedly boosting military spending at the fastest pace in decades. This, of course, is a new development. Well, this isn't an accident. It's the result of the pressure from President Donald Trump. European nations may huff and puff now that their free ride is over, but this is to be expected. Like when you take candy away from a fat child. They react poorly, but ultimately it's for the best. With Russia still threatening European security and the war in Ukraine dragging on, NATO members must actually bring military capability to the table, not just speeches and photo ops. President Trump has exerted his dominance now over NATO, and their arrogance, in my opinion, will no longer be tolerated. Time to pay their fair share. We might as well just leave NATO for good. In fact, I don't think that's the worst idea I've ever heard. Meanwhile, as proof that tariffs really do work, Toyota is bringing more manufacturing muscle back to the United States, and President Trump is calling exactly what it is, pointing out that tariffs actually work. The automaker announced a $3.6 billion expansion in its San Antonio, Texas assembly plant. This is a major investment expected to create roughly 2,000 new jobs. The project will add a second vehicle assembly line and allow Toyota to build the Tacoma pickup in Texas alongside the Tundra and the Sequoia. Tacoma's production will gradually shift from Toyota's Baja California plant in Mexico to San Antonio over the next 4 years. For Texas, this is another major manufacturing win. The expansion will add about 2.5 million square feet to the new San Antonio plant, effectively doubling the size of the site by 2030. Once complete, Toyota's local workforce is expected to grow from around 6,000 employees supported to 23 online suppliers. President Trump's America First economic agenda is responsible for these jobs coming back into the country. President Trump has pushed automakers to build in the United States and has used tariffs on imported vehicles, parts, steel, and aluminum to make American production less attractive, make foreign production, less attractive. This caused top economic minds to preach doom and attempt to prevent President Trump from enacting his trade policies. Again, we have a recalcitrant court system which continues to insist the President of the United States doesn't have the authority to negotiate trade agreements with other countries. When America rewards domestic production and stands up for its workers, companies have to respond if they want to continue making a profit in the world's most vibrant marketplace. As a result, jobs come back home, factories expand, American workers get well-paying jobs, and our nation is once again stronger. Now, across the country, there's a growing backlash that's building against the automated license plate readers and AI-powered surveillance cameras, particularly systems from the private company Flock Safety. Supporters say the cameras help solve crimes and improve public safety, which is undeniably true to a certain extent. But I ask, at what cost? These cameras are creating a warrantless surveillance network that tracks the daily movements of law-abiding Americans. These systems can capture license plates, vehicle details, timestamps, and locations, then upload that information into searchable databases used by law enforcement agencies. Now, some newer technologies can also collect signals from nearby devices or follow pedestrians through camera frames. These are invasive measures that would have the founding fathers loading their muskets, frankly. This kind of mass data collection runs afoul of the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which was specifically written to protect Americans from broad, suspicionless government searches. It doesn't make it any more moral or legal when the government outsources the surveillance to a private entity like Flock cameras. People should never be considered guilty until proven innocent, having to prove their innocence after being swept into a government database. There have already been troubling cases. For example, in Colorado, a woman was wrongly accused in a package theft store after police relied on camera data. Other reports have alleged misuse by officers who accused surveillance tools for personal reasons, including to spy on lovers and enemies. Some cities have actually canceled contracts with the Flock company, while grassroots efforts such as DFlock help residents identify and avoid camera locations. For example, in Virginia, one man faces charges after allegedly disabling multiple cameras, drawing support from people who see these systems as unconstitutionally invasive. Destruction of property, of course, should never be encouraged, and I don't do so here. But when people are messed with and have their rights infringed upon continuously, it should surprise no one when public anger boils over. I think it was Benjamin Franklin who once famously said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." I think we should take heed of those words today in this Orwellian technology staring us right in the face. Meanwhile, something important is happening among young Americans. Many are rediscovering the traditional Christian faith, and that's very good news. In Washington, D.C., young people are gathering not just around politics, but around churches, traditional liturgy, serious debate, and the moral inheritance of Western civilization. Catholic parishes are seeing a huge infusion of younger professionals, staffers, writers, and activists drawn to faith rooted in tradition. For years, America's ruling class pushed secularism, materialism, pornography, broken families, identity politics, and contempt for tradition. But now we see many young people beginning to see the results: loneliness, confusion, disorder, yes, and cultural decay. That is why the growth of Orthodox Christianity and traditional Catholic life among young Americans is so important, and why poll after poll shows a huge uptick in younger people joining the Christian church, including the Catholic Church. This is not merely a religious trend. I think it's a sign of national healing. Young men and women are searching for roots in a rootless age. They're finding that freedom without moral order becomes chaos, and politics without faith becomes power for its own sake. Young people are rediscovering traditional Christian teachings, ancient liturgy, and a wholesome faith-based community of dedicated followers of Christ, and they should be welcomed. America's best traditions were never built on nihilism. They were built on faith, family, duty, law, and ordered liberty. The left may mock this as strange or extreme, but what is truly extreme is a society that teaches young people to abandon God, nation, and family, and then go on hormones, get butchered by a surgeon, and transitioned to a different gender. The return to Christian tradition may be one of the clearest signs that America is far from finished. In fact, our best days lie ahead. This is a nation that is primed for political, cultural, and spiritual revival, and President Donald Trump is leading that revival. These new poll numbers showing the uptick in young people joining the Christian church, specifically the Catholic Church, are very, very encouraging. When I myself declared that I had been redeemed in the blood of the cross, many on the left, including at the Washington Monthly, said this was some kind of head fake, some kind of psyop. I said at the time, I don't really care what they think. I only care what he thinks. Thanks for joining us today on the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. We'll be back with more politics on the other side. So whatever you do, don't go away.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. We're here with the cutting-edge political news you won't hear anywhere else. Well, Microsoft is cutting roughly 4,800 jobs worldwide. That's about 2.1% of its global workforce, and another warning sign that the tech economy will not be fueling job growth. According to a WARN filing submitted to the Washington State Employment Security Department, the layoffs include 605 employees connected to Microsoft's Redmond headquarters and remote workers across the Puget Sound region. In a message to employees, the Microsoft Chief People's Officer, I love that title, Amy Coleman said the company is making difficult staffing decisions as it focuses people and investments on priorities needed to compete in a fast-changing industry. She said the layoffs are concentrated mainly in Microsoft's commercial and Xbox divisions, while warning that more changes are ahead. Changes meaning the loss of more jobs. The People's Officer, I can't get over that title, Amy Coleman, insisted that the eliminated roles are not being replaced by artificial intelligence, but she acknowledged that AI is changing how work gets done and that employees must keep learning new skills as tasks become automated. So these people are denying reality. In other words, she's setting the stage to blame the workers for not adapting during the next round of inevitable cuts. The other story here is the poor business climates in the states dominated by liberal governments who have high tax policies and soft on crime policies has its consequences. A recent Association of Washington Business survey found that 91% of employers are not planning to expand in Washington state, while nearly three-quarters cite the state's growing tax burden as the major challenge. The combination of layoffs and failed far-left governance is leading to a perfect storm that will leave once bustling cities like Seattle and San Francisco in utter ruin. But places with lower tax schemes should also be cautious of AI-related tech investment as well, as its job-killing potential is now, based on these facts, completely undeniable. Meanwhile, as we have warned, the Democratic Socialists of America are gaining real power inside the Democrat Party, and voters should be paying closer attention. After a string of high-profile primary wins in New York, D.C., and Colorado, the Democratic Socialists of America organizations are now turning their focus to Michigan and Wisconsin. In Michigan, the far-left Muslim Abdul El-Sayed is running in a competitive Democrat primary for the U.S. Senate. And in Wisconsin, the socialist-backed Francesca Hong is seeking the Democratic nomination for governor. We're going to be watching these races very closely to see if the progress of the socialists within the Democrat Party continues apace. According to reports, the socialist wing plans to deploy major far-left figures, including AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and the streamer Hassan Piker, to energize supporters ahead of these August primaries. Now, this is an internal battle the Democrats created by welcoming radicals into their party for years. What was once a center-left coalition built around labor, civil rights, and working-class voters, still a party that believed in capitalism, free enterprise, a strong national defense, and anti-communism, has moved to be an openly socialist party, hostile to capitalism, hostile to traditional law enforcement, and to America's founding principles. Many of us have warned for years this was not just rhetoric, that the far left is using primaries, urban political machines, activist nonprofits, and on-flying influencers to push the Democratic Party further and further away from the mainstream. The result is a party increasingly shaped by candidates and activists who talk less about opportunity and more about revolution. President Trump and Republicans are already leaning into this anti-communist messaging. The president started that this weekend, and for very good reason. Most Americans understand that socialism and communism have failed everywhere they have been tried. Unfortunately, among young Americans who are feeling left behind in the economy, they don't seem to be yet getting the message. Many of them are voting for hope and change without understanding what they're voting for. As laughable as some of these socialists are, they cannot be underestimated. They're going to be a formidable force in the years to come. Our great hope of beating them is the MAGA agenda, the America First agenda. Only by doubling down on MAGA can we repel these far-left radicals who will destroy everything and everything in its wake if they get the chance. Meanwhile, we have reports that the actress Cheryl Hines, married to Secretary of HHS Robert F. Kennedy, has been blackballed from the new HBO comedy series because of her marriage to RFK, who serves, of course, as the president's Secretary of Health. Hines was a major cast member on all 12 seasons of Curb Your Enthusiasm, playing the role of Larry David's wife on the show, and had worked closely with the acclaimed comedian for years, but she's no longer welcome because First Lady Barack Obama's wife, Michelle Obama, has blackballed her in Hollywood. Thank you for joining us today in the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Make this summer unforgettable driving in a Mercedes-Benz from Mercedes-Benz of Edison. Join me Friday, July 10th at 12 noon, where I will be hosting my show live from Mercedes-Benz of Edison. I'm excited to see my friend and GM Doug Wells and the entire staff. Mercedes-Benz of Edison is committed to making your shopping experience stress-free. That's one reason they were named the 2026 Mercedes-Benz Dealer of the Year by Cars.com. Visit Mercedes-Benz of Edison and meet me, Greg Kelly. See you soon.